Welcome back. Today we're diving into the ultimate survival guide for something that sounds, frankly, pretty intimidating: the Ontario Expropriations Act. If you've ever wondered what actually happens when the government decides they really need the land your house or business is sitting on, say to build a new highway or transit line, well, this explainer is exactly what you need. It's a pretty dense piece of legislation, but we're going to break it all down. We'll look at your rights, the exact process, and what you're actually going to face.
So, here's our roadmap. We'll be covering the power to take land, the approval process, calculating fair compensation, disputes and appeals, and finally, possession and abandonment.
Okay, part 1, the power to take land. First things first, what does it actually mean? To expropriate just means that an authorized statutory authority is taking your land without your permission. It really doesn't matter if you don't want to sell. If they have the statutory power, whether that's the Crown, a municipality, or a school board, they can initiate this whole thing. But, and this is a big but, they can't just do it overnight.
Which brings us right to part 2, the approval process.
The Act actually mandates a very specific checklist. First up, the expropriating authority has to serve you a notice of intention, and they also have to publish it in the local newspaper for 3 weeks. Now here is absolutely the most crucial part. If you want a hearing to challenge whether taking your land is fair, sound, and reasonably necessary, you have to notify the approving authority in writing within 30 days. Just 30 days. So the clock is ticking. If you request it, the Ontario Land Tribunal holds a hearing, summarizes all the evidence, and issues a report. And it's only after considering that report that the authority can give final approval to take your property.
But I do need to give you a quick warning about a bit of a shortcut. The Lieutenant Governor and Council actually has the power to direct that an expropriation proceed without a hearing. They can do this if they consider it necessary or expedient in the public interest. It's known as the Special Circumstances Exception. Now, if they use this bypass, they do have to serve you a copy of the order, and they are legally required to report this action to the Legislative Assembly within 30 days of the next session. So yeah, it's rare, but it's written right into the Act.
All right, let's move on to part 3. Calculating fair compensation, the part everyone really wants to know about.
Under the Expropriations Act, your compensation is actually broken down into 4 main buckets. You don't just get one random arbitrary check. No, your payout is based on the market value of the land, damages for disturbance, damages for injurious affection, and any special difficulties in relocation. Let's actually unpack what these legal terms mean for your wallet, starting with market value.
So, the golden rule of market value under the Act is simply the amount your land would realize if sold in the open market by a willing seller to a willing buyer. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. It completely ignores whatever massive project the government is building. So, say they're expropriating your land to build a super lucrative new transit station. You do not get a financial bump for that future development. The value is assessed strictly as if the project doesn't even exist.
Now, what if they only take your front yard to widen the road, but they leave your house? Well, that's where this heavy legal phrase, injurious affection, comes in. Let's de-jargon that a bit. It simply means you get paid for the damage caused to the leftover land you still own. If taking a slice of your property reduces the market value of the remaining chunk, or if the construction causes personal or business damages, the statutory authority has to compensate you for that loss.
Let's compare the difference in inconvenience payouts, which the Act calls disturbance damages. If the property they take includes your primary residence and it wasn't already up for sale, you actually get a fantastic 5% bonus added to the market value. That's strictly an allowance for the massive inconvenience of having to find a new place. Plus, they cover your actual moving and legal costs. But if you're a tenant, the disturbance payout is a totally different ballgame. It's calculated based on the length of your lease, the portion of time you have remaining, and your real prospects for renewal.
And what about business owners? If a business is located on the expropriated land, they get compensated for business losses resulting from the forced relocation. But here's the interesting part. That compensation usually isn't determined on moving day. Unless you agree otherwise, the Act says business losses aren't evaluated until the business has moved and operated in the new spot for at least 6 months, or up to 3 years, whichever comes first. This just makes sure that the actual, real-world impact of the move is what's getting compensated.
Okay, let's talk about what happens when things get heated in Part 4, Disputes and Appeals. Now, there is an absolutely crucial protection here for property owners. Before the government takes possession of your land, they must serve you an offer, But beyond that, they also have to offer you immediate upfront payment of 100% of the market value as they've estimated it. And here's the absolute best part of this. Accepting that cash right now does not prejudice your right to take them to the tribunal later to argue for a bigger payout. You can pocket their 100% estimate immediately to help you relocate, and you can still fight them tooth and nail for the rest.
And if you do decide to fight, 85% is your massive aha number. Here's why. According to the Act, if you take your dispute to the tribunal and they award you 85% or more of the amount the government originally offered you, the tribunal is required to order the government to pay your reasonable legal, appraisal, and other costs. This is a real game changer. It basically levels the playing field, ensuring that if you have a legitimate case for more money, you aren't penalized by massive legal fees just for standing up for your rights.
Oh, and while you're waiting for the tribunal to make a decision, that unpaid compensation is actually accruing interest. The standard interest rate is 6% a year, and that starts ticking from the date you cease to reside on or make productive use of the lands. However, if the tribunal finds out that the government is intentionally dragging its feet and delaying the process, they can actually penalize the expropriating authority by bumping that interest rate all the way up to a maximum of 12%.
Which brings us to our final stretch, Part 5, Possession and Abandonment.
Look, even after the government's plan is registered and the land technically vests in the authority, they can't just throw you out on the street the next morning. The expropriating authority has to serve you with a formal notice that they require possession. And legally speaking, the date of possession they specify has to be at least 3 months after the date they serve you that notice. So, take a deep breath. You are guaranteed a minimum of 3 months to organize your move.
But check out this fascinating silver lining. What happens if the government takes your land, but before you're fully paid out, they just abandon the project? They realize they don't actually need it. Well, the Act dictates they must notify you, and you, as the original owner, get a pretty amazing choice. You can elect to take the land back and get compensated for any consequential damages, or you can force the government to retain it, and they still have to pay you the full compensation. Plus, if they try to sell the land later on, they literally have to give you the first chance to buy it back at the best offer they receive.
So we've walked through exactly how the Ontario Expropriations Act structures the taking of land. From that very first scary notice to the complex calculations of disturbance damages, all the way to that crucial 85% rule at the tribunal. This whole process is highly regulated, and it's designed to balance massive public infrastructure needs with your strict private property rights. But as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought to ponder. Even with those moving allowances, the 100% upfront cash, and all the legal protections, when the government forces a sale that you never asked for, is fair market value ever truly fair? Think about it. Thanks.